if you're inorganic, if you're inauthentic, it's not going to work.
The NFL draft is super close, and lots of mock drafts are flying around. We've got some analytics, stats being analyzed, and then there's lots of combine moments being talked about. Don't worry, we won't be talking about that today specifically. We're not going to be going into a mock draft at all, but we are going to be talking about the analytics side of the industry. And our guest today, Pfeffer, is going to be going into that with us. He is the co-host of Beyond the Surface X-Rated Sports Show. It's great to have you with us in the building today. Thanks so much for taking the time to be on our show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So you have a really interesting story arc of how you are where you're at right now as co-host. You are a sports analyst. Tell me a little bit of what was the interest in your trajectory to get into that industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I've always been interested in sports myself. I've lived in every time zone. I like to joke about that. I grew up in New York. I moved to Denver, Colorado when I was 14. And at the time that I did was the time when Denver was popping. The Colorado Rockies had just came into the scene a couple years prior. John Elway, everybody thought he was out of town. Instead, he had a major resurgence and then led him to the Super Bowl a couple years later, back to back. Then there was, of course, the Quebec Nordiques that moved all the way from Canada down to Colorado, became the Colorado Avalanche at the time, and they won the Cup like 1 year after getting there, the Stanley Cup. And then, of course, the Nuggets. You know, they were young and exciting, and literally the year that I got there, the second year, Tumbo, I think, was in his second year and took down the Seattle Supersonics, the 8-1 seed. So there was so much going on in Denver at that time. Then I went to school, business school in Indiana University after that. My last 4 years were Bobby Knight's last 4 years, and I've been in Los Angeles a little over 25 years. So I've seen it all out here, and this is, besides New York, obviously a mecca of every sport out here, the Dodgers, the Lakers specifically. And I've just always had an interest and always had a love, and it's just something outside of my standard job as a business professional to get into sports. And somehow I just kept kind of plugging away. I started my own New York Jets podcast out here, and that led me to the individual who started the X-Rated Sports Network. And maybe I should tell everybody watching, because I see it on the bottom here, it says X/RATED. But the reality is that we are really the X-RAYTED. Our founder, our patriarch, Dr. Phil McDonald, started the X-Rated Sports Network. He is a radiologist by trade, so X-Ray. And then obviously it's a name you're never going to forget. The X-Rated Sports Network is why we call it XSN.
That was a good lead up to that, because I forgot to change it, because we were talking about it. I was like, there's no way that this was not intentional.
But again, one of the things we do on the show is actually the XSN Clinic. And this is big for us. And what that is, especially the NBA, which we cover all the time, the stars are getting hurt more and more these years. The pace of the game is so fast. Achilles, calf strains, you name it, knees, they're all getting blown out, unfortunately, all the time. Dr. McDonald really pops into the XSN Clinic and he deep dives, which is why we're called Beyond the Surface. Also, again, to the X-rated idea, taking an X-ray, we're beyond the surface of what's going on with the injury and really explains it in such a way that the audience understands. But we're a talk show. We talk sports all the time, specifically the NBA. But I had gotten hooked up with Dr. Phil maybe 4 years ago. We did a few shows. He built a studio. I was lucky enough to be introduced to him, especially after my podcast. And we got liking each other. And then finally he was like, hey, man, I'm ready to launch a real show, Beyond the Surface, which we did October of 2025.
That's fantastic. A pretty cool opportunity for you guys to now take what you love and turn it into something really unique that people get to enjoy and watch and see a little take on. You work with a couple different teams and leagues as far as like analytics. What are some things that sports fans miss when they're focusing on talent or leadership structure in the organizational culture?
Yeah, sports fans peripherally, they understand what a general manager does. They understand all the way up the hierarchy of a president, the team owner, everybody necessarily in the building, all the way down what it is at the player level, obviously. But I think what's ultimately missed behind the scenes is really how incestuous it all is. And I think that there's this idea that it's, and I use that term almost affectionately because there's like this acrimony that goes on inside of sports. So it's the players versus the owners. And it's always this like division in the split. And that's not really how it is. And I think what recently happened in the WNBA is a prime example of this. This new CBA was signed just a few weeks ago. It's a tremendous win for the sport. It's a tremendous win for the players. It's also a tremendous win for the league, and a league that everybody needs to understand is owned half by the NBA. And in fact, Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner, was appointed by the commissioner of the NBA and Adam Silver. I think a lot of people don't understand that. And again, it was pitted is through the media, like the players are pissed off and they need to get what they deserve. And it's like, this is a huge win for them. No, this is a huge win for everybody. And I promise you, Kathy Engelbert and the league, and especially the NBA, wanted all of these things for the players. This was the idea. It's about bringing everyone together. And this goes on in every league, right? This happens across all the board. No one starts a league or does anything to hope it fails or to not have a good deal with each other. That's never the case. And I think it's more incestuous than a lot of people really understand, especially from the player level all the way up to their own representatives who are talking to the owners and even the owners. And I understand you think about stodgy billionaire individuals and they just want to make money. And it's not always really the case. They want to see those who are on their teams and their own executives and their own coaches and everybody who's in there. It's a lot of love. There's a big love fest going on and they all want everybody to do well.
It's very true. You were talking about the NBA. Did the brackets that you had worked out come to fruition, being a analytics side?
On the NBA, well, I mean, tonight is the first night, obviously, of the first play-in game. We'll see how it all shakes out come mid-June. But yeah, to a degree, we were all kind of thinking that this would be the case, at least for the play-in games. It was pretty much chalk for the top 4 on the East and the top 4 on the West in the NBA. But once you get a little bit lower than that, yeah, we all expected that it would be like Golden State Clippers out of the West in the 9-10 game. I think Portland surprised us a little bit, sneaking into that 7-8 game with the Suns. The Magic, they probably could have been a lot better this year, but everybody saw the Magic in Philadelphia and especially Charlotte. This is the big surprise. I don't think anybody had them at the beginning of the year doing anything. So the fact that they even have a chance against the Heat to make it all the way to the playoffs is as exciting as it gets.
I know a lot of people are very happy about that.
Myself included. If you're a fan of the NBA, you got to be a fan of these kids. LaMelo Ball has done a complete 180. A lot of people have given up on him and expected him not to be a leader. And all of a sudden, he's one of the best in the business at the point guard position. And Colin Knippel, like, if you're not voting for him Rookie of the Year, I don't get it.
A lot of dynasties, I feel like that changed this past year, not only in the NBA, but also in the NFL, which we're going to be moving to because it's a little bit more focused on the draft coming up, right? The NFL, holy moly, this past year was just an absolute dynasty changer. We had Patrick Mahomes that had a huge issue and injury. We got the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers still hasn't given up his idea of whether or not he wants to continue. There's just a lot of shifts. The end there wasn't the teams that most everybody had slated at the beginning. So it was really interesting to see that.
Yeah, a true changing of the guard, undoubtedly. But at the same time, if you think about what went on with the AFC, it's a lot of the teams that we used to see. Right? You're all of a sudden looking and you're like, New England's back. The Broncos are back. Even the Colts are hanging around and they're back. So it just goes on and on. The Jaguars, you hadn't seen them in a while. They stuck in. But
they turned around towards the end. So it was a shocker. I was actually really surprised. They really were up in the beginning of the year.
But to your point, to see Tomlin and Harbaugh at this point move on after, they're such stalwarts of the game for 2 decades at this point. And that is almost jarring. I mean, I think all of us could have digested one of them moving on, but both in the same year.
Right.
They're both in the same division. We're all, our heads are spinning a little bit.
Yeah, very much. So that actually leads into a really good question. And I know the coach for the Lions was talking about this, like what players are the best ones to bring on for a draft. When somebody says a franchise is dysfunctional for years, when they have clear talent there, in your mind as an analyst, what are you going to be looking at to see what else is going on?
Well, it's a great question, but to me, the fish always rots from the head. And that starts with the owner and what they're implementing. I sadly am a massive New York Jets fan. Have been this way going on my now 5th decade.
Poor Jets.
Yeah, poor Jets, poor me, poor anybody who's ever loved the team. Woody Johnson has owned them forever. We're talking about a 15-year playoff drought. And here's a guy who can't get out of his own way, okay, and is consistent. He's putting his sons in positions that don't make any sense. He's sending mixed signals to the team. He's leaving the team and going to be the ambassador over in England. He's leaving his brother in charge. Then he's coming back. Then he wants to do this. Now he's changing this. Now he's got a new coach. Now he's got a GM. Now we're going to try this in the power dynamic where these 2 guys have the same power. No, wait, they don't have that any longer. Now we're doing this. No, wait, he can't get anybody of merit. And I don't mean to put anybody down. And I like Aaron Glenn. I like Todd Bowles. These are good individuals. I want to root for them. But you're not going to get like Sean Payton after he was an opportunity to come and coach the Jets. You're not going to get Mike Vrabel, who obviously went to these are guys who have no interest, who actually understand how to run an organization, to run head coaching, or to be a head coach at a high level and run the season. You're not going to get John Harbaugh after he's gone. Mike Tomlin, he was available for a period of time after some tremors with Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell years ago, and the Jets never even had a chance to get him, never thought about it. Belichick was the head coach for one day before he resigned and then went on a 20-year run with the Patriots. That's the problem. And it starts from leadership. It starts from management and from ownership. And you have to look at that. Number one, you look at the teams that are there year in, year in, especially in the NFL, and you can look and say, hey, there's a stability with ownership. They get what this league is. They understand what matters. And the rest of them, guys like Woody Johnson, they have no idea what they're doing, and they just want to make a splash.
That's very true. I actually love that. And you're right. It does come from the top down, and does for what companies as well, right? So I think it's smart that you started out on the business side, because then sports business is the same thing, but just obviously you have a couple different factors that go in there. Like you said, from the top down always. When you're looking at a healthy culture, what is something that is a sign of that in an organization?
Accountability and people. First and foremost, when you're looking at the culture, right, before you even get to the product that you're putting on the field, before you're even thinking about anything else, you really can see the people. You got good people in the building who care about each other. And again, that starts from the top down, as we understand, but it's really about the people. You got the people making the right decisions in the right jobs, whether that's the head coach, whether that's the general manager, whether that's a vice president, or whether that's the players on the field. And they understand what it is they're there to do. They're buying into each other, even more than they're buying into the team element or what's written on the wall or whatever. Play like a Jet. Hey, we've all been trying to play like a Jet for decades, and we all know what that means. It's not what works. It's about the people. It really is. And you have to really care about the people in your building, and the good teams do.
I agree. You have to care about your people to create those loyalties. Otherwise, you're really just not going to succeed. How do you feel about media narratives shaping the way that fans view athletes and teams?
It's undoubted they do. Media is all powerful. I always like to see, and it's something my father always taught me, believe nothing of what you hear and only half of what you see. And that's how I look at the media. And I'm part of the media, right? But that's how anyone who takes it in has to really look at it through that lens. Again, believe nothing of what you hear and half of what you see. But that's the fun of it, And look, the media does absolutely shape everything about sports, because you're not just watching the games. It's all consuming after the fact shows like this from every level. It doesn't matter if we're talking about influencer all the way up to what's on ESPN. This is something that we all seek out. A lot of us need to feel. We can't even make a decision until we go online and see how we feel about it or how others feel about it. Is that how I feel about it? Whatever it is. And that's the same for sports. And you know what? It's okay. I've learned that certainly it's okay, as long as you keep in mind, you got to remind yourself, I shouldn't believe anything that I'm hearing from anybody. And I should only be believing half of what I'm watching.
That's super true. And it's funny because I feel like those who are in the media or entertainment industry in any way understand that probably the best. So when it comes down to making a sports conversation memorable, especially for you guys' show, which we're going to get to, that'll be the next question here. What turns an episode into a good analysis for you guys? Something that listeners can actually remember and share?
Debate. And I almost hate to say it, because it comes down to this idea of like, well, here's another show where guys are fighting, or here's a version of Hot Take, or somebody's just saying something to say something. But the reality is, you don't forget debate. It gets exciting when it gets, you feel like you're personally invested when you're watching, when the individual's on screen. Even if they're agreeing with each other, they're still debating. And we've learned that. But we do it in such a way, because it's such a feel-good brotherhood that we got, and we all love each other. It's done in a great way. In fact, Dr. Phil McDonald and Dwight Walton, who's a Canadian basketball legend, they're cousins. So to see them go at it is always the best. But,
that's great. Always families. Yeah, that's
when it's all in the family. People love that.
Keep it all in the family. No, I love that. And there was another question. Do you feel like the shock and awe helps shape sport narratives to go farther? I feel like there's been a lot of extra fights going on. Do some of these fights happen because are they encouraged?
They're definitely encouraged to do this. Do I think it helps to go further? No, I don't always. I think in the scope of your show or your audience, and you're doing a healthy debate, it's good. But if it's done for shock purposes, if it's
Right.
done for the hot take purposes too much, if it's done because you're trying to do something viral or you're trying to be too different, no, it's not helping anybody.
No, I agree with that. I feel like you can kill your audience that way too. If people want to see synergy, and so if you have some sort of chemistry and connection, that creates so much more interest than some sort of shock and awe that may be a hit here and there, but it's also going to taint and give a bad influence as well.
I think being organic, I'd add to that. The idea of being organic as opposed to inorganic. Organic's good for you. We know that. Or inorganic's not. And that's the same for sports shows, and it's the same for the audience. If you're giving them organic content, organic thoughts, and really, again, an organic intimacy of your show. And I use that term, again, also affectionately. And I think that's important because you want to be intimate with your audience. Then, yeah, that's real. And that's something that makes something watchable and is good for your show. And if you're inorganic, if you're inauthentic, it's not going to work.
Very true. That actually sets up good for the next question. What are some fascinating sports reveals or some really touching moments that you feel have occurred either on your show or something that you have seen this past year that have just helped with creating an awareness for athletes of the team, the leadership?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's interesting. Some of the most tender moments, they've actually come from some of the old heads
Mhm.
we've had on the show. Like, for instance, we had Rick Barry a couple of months ago. We just had Mike Fratello on the other day. He was amazing, by the way. He just got inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame
Wow.
for announcing. Obviously, he was Marv Alvarez colorman, the czar of the telestrator. He was incredible. And he told a story about how he worked for Dick Vitale decades ago, and he used to make $35 a week
Wow.
and Vitale was making him ham sandwiches. So he basically made $35 a week and what Vitale would make every day with ham and cheese sandwiches. Like, it's stuff like that. But Rick Barry was talking about it. He's well known. I'm going to use the word persnickety in probably the nicest word I could use for the guy. And he's well known as a malcontent, but that's not really who he is. And when we had him on the show, I kind of set up this idea of like, hey, man, you grew up an East Coast kid and you made your way down to Florida and played your ball down in Miami. And then you went around the world and did all these amazing things. And we did this big setup and he was so like touched to be able to say, yeah, this is what it was all about for me in touching lives. And he's like, I understand what I'm known for and how hard it's been, but like where I was able to really touch lives and to make a difference as either a coach or a player or just being an executive or whatever it was, or just talking to people. It was things like that. I mean, Nancy Lieberman was on our show and she was
Wow.
amazing, right? Like her history and who she was, so awesome. And she told some incredible stories. And she was so open about what it was to really be a woman in a man's world, especially back when she played and was part of it. And then obviously all of her great accolades, especially with Oklahoma City Thunder. But these are the moments that we live for and what they're teaching us and why people do it, because these are the memories we hold on to. And you're really affecting lives, affecting other players' lives, and certainly those who watch the game but want to know more about the game than what they're watching.
Yeah, that's true. People want to see the real deal, and not necessarily like you said in a shock value way. They want to see those wholesome moments. They want to hear the behind the scenes in a really wholesome way. So I think that's really cool that you guys have had that opportunity to have such great stars on your show and get that experience and that moments with them.
It's tremendous.
We're going to wrap it up here with a call to action, but prior to this, our last question, if you have a pick for the draft, what is that going to be? What's your perfect pick?
Well, again, I mentioned sadly that I'm a New York Jets fan, and we have 4 of the top 44 picks, but we have the second pick in the draft, and I think it's pretty clear. Fernando Mendoza is going 1 to the Raiders. And by the way, I mentioned I went to Indiana University, so excited for him, excited for my Hoosiers. I hope he does well. I'll be rooting for, even though he's going to put on an Oakland uniform, I'll be rooting for him. Who knows? One day he might be on the Jets. So really, we're on the clock. The New York Jets are on the clock, and my perfect pick is Arvell Reese. I don't want to hear anybody else's name. I want him out of Ohio State. He's a hybrid. He's a linebacker. He can get to the quarterback. He can do it all. He's unbelievable. The kid's got every intangible. He's my perfect pick. It's unquestionable.
Yeah, no, he does. No, that's very true. I really think that's a good one. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on the show. Tell us a little bit about call to action here. Where can we find to support you guys with the X-Rated Sports Network show? I know we can find you on YouTube.
So I'll say it again. So the name of the show that we have that's live. So we're live every Monday and every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And our shows go for about 2.5 to 3 hours. So again, every Monday, every Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern, it's called Beyond the Surface. And you can find us on YouTube. on the X-Rated Sports Network. And you can see right below here, if I can maybe right this way. Yeah. X-R-A-Y-T-E-D. Look up the X-Rated Sports Network, like and subscribe to the X-Rated Sports Network. I'm actually excited to announce that I'm going to be launching a football show myself come August. So we're going to have another show on the X-Rated Sports Network. It's going to be called Hometown Blues. But for now, we've got Beyond the Surface. It's incredible. It's NBA centric, though we do cover all sports. And again, Mondays and Thursdays, 2 p.m. Eastern on the X-Rated Sports Network on YouTube.
Love that. What is the Hometown Blues going to be focusing on?
So it's going to be a humor NFL show, but the idea, you'll see. I'm going to give a recap for 5 minutes of what goes on in the NFL that particular week, all throughout the entire year. And then I transition over to a therapist who needs therapy himself as a New York Jets fan. And I speak to one other fan from another team, and together we commiserate with our Hometown Blues. But we're going to deep dive specifically on that team and that fan and all of the NFL this way. It's a great way into the lens of the NFL. And we're talking it just like our names, the X-Rated Sports Network. We do go beyond the surface, so I'll be doing that same thing on the show with the NFL.
That is awesome. I love that. That sounds like a good watch. So you guys will definitely have to tune in once that comes out. But everybody, please do go follow, subscribe, like to Beyond the Surface X-Rated Sports Network show. And you'll see AM Pfeffer there with all his team and clan, and some good times, it sounds. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us today. AM, appreciate you so much for coming on to the show, and we will see you guys back here next time.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate this. Thanks.